Hello and welcome to Nightingale in Japan, and this episode is part of a 6-episode series where I talk about moving from Australia to Japan, and in this first episode I will be talking about my joys and pains of the initial flight and arrival in Japan. On the morning of our journey, we were in a Brisbane hotel right next to the airport, and my wife and I woke up at 3 to 4 o'clock in the morning, and our departure flight from Brisbane to Cairns was at 6 o'clock. And so we checked the room for our passports and all of everything else, as you do, and then we went downstairs into the foyer and jumped on the shuttle that was only 5 minutes to the airport. The first part of our journey was relatively easy. We went straight into the lounge of the airport and waited to fly from Brisbane to Cairns, which was the first part of our trip. Pretty much we had a lot of time to kill, so we sat down and cozied up and chatted about the excitement of what's to come. I often enjoy the romance and intrigue of airports because you cross paths with people that are going in separate directions, and there's quite a high likelihood that you will never see these people again. We boarded the plane, and within a short few hours we landed in Cairns, which is the northeast of Australia, and it was bloody boiling. And the domestic airport in Cairns is quite a walk away from the international airport, and so my wife and I, considering we'd paid for max luggage, had to wheel our luggage from the domestic airport to the international airport, and it was sweltering. It was absolutely boiling. And you will learn as you watch more of my videos, I am heat averse. I absolutely hate the heat, and yeah, it killed me. Once we arrived at the international airport, we had to wait a few hours because that was part of our itinerary. And so my wife and I waited, and then we eventually managed to go through customs. All a smooth process, other than the fact that I'd had tons of electronics. I had my tablet, I had my phone, I had my laptop, and it is quite a palaver to try and pull all that stuff out and put it onto the tray and then take it through to customs, so I had to let other people go before me because I was taking so long. Otherwise it was relatively smooth. My wife and I went through to customs, and then we went into the duty-free section, and I have to say I was a bit disappointed with the duty-free section. Cairns Airport is quite small, and so there wasn't really that much in there. And interestingly, as soon as you walk through customs, you walk into another lounge area, and some of the shops were closed, or some of the shops actually you could see into the interior, and you noticed that they had nothing in there. It was like a completely empty shop, which was quite surprising. After waiting a while in the lounge, waiting to catch a Cairns flight to Osaka, would you believe it? A lady came along and told everybody to gather together, and she said, "I'm sorry, your flight has been delayed." And so as soon as she said that, first thing obviously everybody's going to ask, how long is it delayed for? It was delayed for 5 hours. And so I asked, well, why is it being delayed? And she said, oh, there's been some engineering problems with the plane. And I'm thinking in my mind, okay, it's better to be better safe than sorry, or safe than dead. So I was happy with that. However, she then told us, but you're all going to have to go back downstairs and then come back through customs again. And I'm thinking, oh, okay. I don't particularly want to do that. So we all went downstairs into the beginning lounge. And one of the other things that popped into my mind was, what are we going to do when we get to the other side? Now, we had already booked a hotel in Kyoto, which is quite a distance from Osaka. And the unfortunate thing, once my wife did a Google search, was the trains were cancelled after a certain amount of time. I think we were meant to arrive much earlier than the time that we did arrive, which was 11, and trains stopped earlier than then. The other thing I wanted to have a look at was some sort of reimbursement for the time that we had to wait within the airport. And some companies have a policy that if you wait for more than 5 hours, Jetstar, that you can actually have a free meal. No one told us that. So if I hadn't actually searched that on the internet, no one had approached me to mention that we could or were entitled to that. And so the things that I went up to the counter with were the questions. One, what can we do when we get to Osaka? Because we're going to be stuck. There's no trains. We've already booked a hotel in Kyoto, and the lady was pretty tentative on that. She said, I'll have to get back to you. There wasn't much I could do with that. And with regards to the meal, I asked her, and interestingly she said, okay, considering it is a 5-hour delay, we will give you vouchers. So as soon as I received the voucher, the next thing I did, obviously, was told the other passengers on the flight, because some of them didn't know either. So it's not fair that, obviously I get a voucher and everybody else doesn't. So pay it forward, but in a bizarre way. One of the positives that came out from having to wait was I actually met a Catholic priest from Spain called Esteban. Now, considering I'd been living in Australia for quite some time, I only occasionally saw people from what I would say that neck of the woods, and so it was a nice conversation with him. I haven't kept in contact with him too much, but I have reached out to him during the time of this video because this video sparked my memory. And after waiting so many hours and being fed and watered, it was finally time to go through customs again. And do you think it was a smooth process? Like hell was it. As soon as I got through to the area, the first person that I saw was a lady that was accepting passports. Doing my due diligence, I actually wedged my passport in a Japanese language book to try and maintain the form of the passport. And when I first presented my passport, the first time going through customs, there was no problem at all. And now, as I handed my passport to this lady, the first thing she said to me was, your passport's bent. And I said to her, well, I said, I'm sorry, but I tried to keep it straight. And she said to me, try harder. Oh, so I'd been waiting 5 hours at this point and I was livid. I had to bite my tongue because there was no way this was going to stop me from going to Japan. I bit my tongue and I carried on, and I had to go through the whole process of taking all my shit out of the bag again, putting it onto the tray, and all the while trying to keep a smile on my dial and not look bothered. Obviously I was bothered, but anyway. So we go back through customs and everything was fine. We sit in the lounge again for at least probably another hour, waiting for the flight to arrive. And finally, the plane had arrived. Everybody got into line, and as we got onto the plane, I put my baggage into the overhead baggage area. I sat down next to my wife. There was no one else next to us, and I was ecstatic. And I bought my pre-flight drink that I always do. A nice shot of whiskey, can be on the rocks, doesn't matter, it's a ritual of mine, and especially for long haul flights at least. And my wife and I settled in for a 7.5 hour flight. On the flight I was listening to Final Fantasy VII soundtracks, and I played some games on my mobile, doing some crosswords. As you can imagine, I was absolutely excited. It's not every day everybody gets to go to the place that they were always dreaming about from their childhood. I was just ecstatic. During the flight, I was also monitoring the flight path on the monitor. I pretty much had that up the whole time. I didn't use the in-flight entertainment system or anything. My wife fell asleep next to me, but I generally don't sleep on long-haul flights. It's just something that I don't really like doing. I'm not the best flyer. I get a bit claustrophobic, especially for long-haul flights. But after a while, we were finally entering Japanese airspace. And what enters my mind? North Korea shooting a missile and shooting us out of the sky. So as you can imagine, I'm doing my load, but at the same time, I'm absolutely excited because I can see all the lights, and I can see the coastline, and I can see all the lit up lights in the city, and I'm just, as every second goes on, I'm just getting more and more excited. And finally, we land in Osaka. We wait for the lights to go off and everybody can get up, and we were sat right next to the door, so we could pretty much grab our stuff and exit straight away. And as soon as they opened the door, a massive rush of lovely cold air came into the cabin, and that was an absolute contrast between the boiling heat in Australia and going straight into Japan's winter. I think at the time I was in shorts and shirt, but I wasn't bothered. I was loving it. And so my wife and I got onto the galleyway, and then as soon as we collected our baggage, we were able to go through customs. Now, this time, customs wasn't as bad. The lady on the counter was quite stern, and so, you know, customs. Because I was arriving in the country for the first time on a spousal visa, I had to get some extra stamps and a ID card printed for me, whereas other people were just going through straight away. Of course, my wife being a native Japanese person, she could just get through nice and easy. So it took a bit longer for me as well, and there was a bit of discrepancy with some of the listing of the goods or the items that I'd sent with me. As you can imagine, it gets a bit lost in translation. But everything was fine. I walked through and we got out into a little walkway area, and we were fortunate because one of the Japanese Jetstar representatives was actually telling people, guess what? They'd actually managed to book buses going from Osaka to the city in Osaka, and they'd also booked a bus for people going to Kyoto. My wife and I were relieved because by this point we were tired. So we started walking and we went out through the exit of the airport, and once again, a massive blast of cold, icy air hit me, and I was loving it, to be honest with you. It was great. So my wife took the lead and we turned right from the exit of the airport doors and started walking to the bus. And as I was walking up to the bus, in the bus window, I could see a friendly face smiling back at me. And you'd think, oh, wait a minute, he must be talking about the priest again. No, this friendly friend had little antlers, a lovely little smile, and it was Chopper. It was Chopper from One Piece, the little plushie. And my inner otaku, I was so excited. The driver took our baggage. Both my wife and I got onto the bus. But by this point, my head was absolutely banging. And when I have a bad headache, I generally start to feel a bit sick as well. But otherwise, we took off in the bus to our destination, Kyoto, and the bus driver actually turned the radiators on, which for me is a reminder of when I used to live back in the UK, because it's not often that you have radiators on the Sunshine Coast in Australia on the bus, because it's warm most of the year round. And it was really lovely, but as time went on, it just got a bit too hot as we were going along. But as we were going along on the main highways, as you can imagine, all the signs, the katakana, hiragana, kanji signs, all the illumination, even some of the bad things like the pollution, everything, the pollution coming from these massive stacks, everything was all unfamiliar, but it was all so exciting. As my wife and I were traveling along, I wanted to close my eyes, but I didn't, because I did not want for a second to miss this complete new experience. To put it in short, I was like a pig in shit, or some might say a pig in mud. It was awesome. I was loving it so much. We finally arrived at Kyoto station, and the first thing that my wife and I did, we went straight to the hotel, we dropped our bags in, and then straight after that, we went back downstairs, out into the street, and then I had my first konbini experience. We went to 7-Eleven, and we also went to another chain called Lawson. I think my wife bought some onigiri, which is basically like a rice ball, and I know what I bought. I bought myself a famous Nissin cup noodle, curry flavour, and some margarine pancake type things. My wife and I went back to the hotel, scoffed a lot, and then we hit the sack, ready for my first day in Japan and my first day in Kyoto. If you enjoyed this video, please hit a like and subscribe, and in my next video I will be taking you through the gorgeous Inari Shrine and also the Heian Shrine, which I call the Tekken Shrine. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Bye.